Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Kiwi Collaborator episode on the Vinnie Eastwood Show. My very special guest joining me for the first segment is Evelyn Gilbert from Aotearoa, a widerperspective.wordpress.com. Evelyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the topic for today is the current Prime Minister of New Zealand, Prime Minister, Freudian slip, of New Zealand, John Key, and his banking past and who he really is and what have you, because we've elected him twice already. When I say the we, I mean the sheep, who are stupid enough to vote for somebody who they don't know or have any clue what the hell their back record is. So what we want to do is give the New Zealand public a full background check. Okay, like if you ever wanted to get an employee or something of that nature to do something for you, you better find out what the hell their background is. And today we're going to be looking at some of the background elements of who this man John Key in fact actually is. Evelyn, would you like to take it away?
John Key is a man who started here in New Zealand as a foreign exchange trader, and he has basically made his whole career from round about 86 all the way to 2001 in the foreign exchange, but not just the foreign exchange, which is basically, buying and selling different currencies and making a profit. But what he was also very good in, and what he did from almost day one, in fact, in the first 2 months of his employment at the Bankers Trust Bank here in New Zealand, he was very active in the then nascent derivatives trade. And he grew his career basically on the derivatives that were used in foreign exchange, which really is just gambling. So that's what he's been doing in his career before he came back, or you could say sent back, to do a stint as a politician in a high position. In fact, he made it a condition that if he came back to do politics here, he didn't want to start as a backbencher, work his way up. He wanted to be put up front straight away. Vincent.
Well, what kind of personality type are we talking about here?
That's a very interesting question, because they've done, they wanted to investigate and they wanted to do a science project and learn more about psychopaths in Switzerland. And so they had a check. What you always have is you have a check group. You have a sort of that you ask the same questions from, and that you hope will give you something to measure the results that you have with your known psychopaths against. And it turned out that because they used a foreign exchange group of foreign exchange traders, and every single one of them was more psychopathic than the psychopaths that were in jail. So that's the kind of personality disorder or type you're talking about.
We're talking about the new term. What was it called? The corporate psychopath.
Very much so, yes. Very much so.
Okay, so the characteristics of these people are they smile a lot, but when they smile, it's different to other people. Like, if you or I smile, Evelyn, you'll notice our eyes crinkle at the corners. Our eyes smile too when our mouth does. You look at any picture of John Key when he's smiling.
Yes, his eyes don't smile. It was more, psychopaths are incredibly reckless. They don't have a conscience, or a very small one. They have no problem lying or being caught lying. And as we know, John Key has been caught lying a lot of times, and it didn't seem to really make much difference to him when he was caught lying. These are all characteristics.
He simply passes them off and calls the people conspiracy theorists, or makes some kind of denigration against character when he's attacked. And this has indeed been my experience with psychopaths as well. It's almost like they're a form of scumbaggery judo, where if truth comes at them, they're capable of actually catching it like a baseball mitt and hurling it back at you at 100 miles an hour. And boy, get out of the way, mate.
Yeah. So if you're asking what kind of what kind of personality type are we talking about? Well, especially since he actually really floated to the top. If we're talking scum, it floats to the top. We're talking about a psychopath. He was, he was the actual global head for Merrill Lynch for foreign exchange. He was also the European head for bonds and derivatives, and that is very interesting because when he started to work for Merrill Lynch, which was after the Bankers Trust Bank collapsed due to fraud, Procter & Gamble suing the bank for fraud in the derivatives trade, he said, right, I'm out of here, and he was hired by Merrill Lynch to set up their derivatives department. And the Merrill Lynch is an American bank, and he basically set up the London branch of Merrill Lynch for the derivatives and bonds trade. And they did that in the late 90s because you could do much more what would be considered fraudulent trading in the United States. It was legal in London. So that's where he got his. Oh, you got a Penny Brightest.
Yeah. Well, hold on,
Okay,
just a sec there, Evelyn. We're coming back right now. We also have Penny Bright joining us, but before we go to Penny from waterpressure.wordpress.com, Evelyn's got a little something to finish. Go right ahead, Evelyn.
Okay, so John Key was sent to London to set up the Merrill Lynch Bonds and Derivatives Department in Europe, and they did so in London because London is far more deregulated than the United States with regards to banking and foreign exchange trading and derivatives trading. So he, in a way, set up a department where they could be much more fraudulent and deregulated. And not only did he do that, he was then sent to Ireland to set up a branch there as well, because they had a lot of tax cuts, they had a lot of incentives for banks to come over, and as a part of that, he helped Ireland become, for a moment, very, very rich, but now also very, very poor. So that is his career in a nutshell. Hi, Penny.
I'm just in the middle of a mouthful. How are you?
I am good. I hear you're going to be speaking about John Key tonight as well.
Yes, I am. Yep. I just did a bit of quick bit of research today, and speaking of the Irish, yes, it's an article that Fran O'Sullivan did with John Key back in July the 20th, 2005, saying that Key chases luck of the Irish. And I've done a bit of research, what he said at the time and how wonderful it was going to be. And then, of course, Ireland went clunk. And so what I want to know is how much is John Key personally responsible for the stuff-up of the Irish economy?
And did you find anything that could lead you to a conclusion?
Absolutely. I don't know if I've got time to do it now. I'll have a go. Yep. So it's just that, I mean, we've still got these reporters. Fran O'Sullivan, I really think she needs to review. She said back on the 20th of July 2005, in light of Ireland going clunk. So, all right. So what she said in this article was banking, boards and governance, company taxation, economy, fiscal policy, foreign policy, interest rates, New Zealand, National MP, because he wasn't the Prime Minister in 2005, National MP John Key gets a gleam in his eye when he starts talking about New Zealand becoming the Jersey of the South Pacific. Quote, why not have an offshore banking industry based here, he asks. Quote, in the right conditions, you could attract 200 banks to register here, each with a CEO and staff. You could attract insurance companies, bring back lots of Kiwi accountants and lawyers, single out clusters such as high-class yachts or other special sectors, as the Irish did, unquote. Key is clearly on a roll as he lists the options New Zealand could explore if it decided to abandon outdated ideology and take a more pragmatic approach to growing the economy. The former investment banker knows what he is talking about. As head of global foreign exchange for investment giant Merrill Lynch, he shifted a considerable amount of his business to Ireland in the mid-1990s to take advantage of a 10% tax rate for foreign investors. The investment was a runaway success. So that's where I've left the article. So has our Prime Minister John Key helped thousands of his clients avoid or minimise tax by shifting business to Ireland? So how did that work out for Ireland?
So he's literally a professional tax-dodging consultant.
Well, effectively.
In charge of a country.
Scary.
Well, what has happened here in over the last couple of years is that they send up what is called a clearinghouse. And a clearinghouse is basically nothing but a fund that helps
slush fund?
People. It's a slush fund, yes. It really literally is a slush fund. And it helps people deal in derivatives trade. So he's brought the derivatives trade to the exchange here, the stock exchange here. And one of the derivatives that they came up with was the dairy derivatives. Nowhere done in the entire world, only in New Zealand. So he has brought a lot of trust work, a lot of derivatives trade to New Zealand, same way as he did with Ireland. I don't know to what extent, I don't know the amounts of money we're talking about, but with $112 billion in 2011 of derivatives on our books, I dare say he's done a fair bit.
How much were on the books around 2008? Do we have any of that information?
Well, these are good questions which we need to follow up. But what I'd really like to do, if I could have maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I can just go through and then give the facts about what happened to Ireland, because is that okay?
By all means.
Okay. All right. So this is the link that I got, and it says the boom becomes a bubble. However, from 2002 onwards, the nature of the boom began to change. Labour productivity was no longer increasing. Inflation was high, and growth in GDP increasingly became related to the housing market. Across the economy, wage increases threatened competitiveness. By 2006, although the public finances still appeared strong, this was deceptive because much of the revenue the state took in was related to the property market. The property
is this in New Zealand?
No, this
or
is Ireland.
No,
This is Ireland. I'm trying to explain about going from the
well, you
investment.
could be talking about New Zealand, of
well,
course.
exactly,
It's the same thing is happening here.
Exactly right. Okay. The property-related revenues included not only stamp duty and capital gains tax, but just as importantly, a large amount of VAT paid by developers, as well as income tax paid by workers in the very large construction sector. The tax base was effectively very narrow and dependent to a large extent on the housing boom. And then there's a graph, but despite this risk, Ireland continued to increase its public expenditure, funded expensive capital projects, but also allowing some categories of current spending to rise very rapidly. The speculative bubble in property was supported by a surge in bank lending, and the balance sheets of Irish banks grew disproportionately large relative to the size of the economy. Banks had traditionally relied on their deposit base to fund their lending activity. However, greater financial integration, spurred in part by the birth of the euro, allowed them to turn more and more to short-term borrowing from abroad and so-called wholesale money markets. This period also saw a global increase in risk appetite by financial markets, and the Irish banks were caught up in this. The crisis erupts in Ireland. By 2007, the housing market had reached its peak. That year, tax revenues began to decline markedly. New home completions fell for the first time since 1988, and in 2008, Ireland experienced its significant increase in unemployment in 15 years. Irish banks began to report arrears on their loan books, and with confidence evaporating, were faced with the prospect of deposit outflows. At the same time, short-term interbank lending, on which Irish banks had become heavily reliant for their funding, became difficult to access due to the international financial crisis. Responding to these pressures, the government decided to issue a blanket guarantee of the bank's liabilities and to recapitalise them using public funds. The large cost of these measures further exacerbated the structural budget deficit which the housing market collapse had revealed. The bank debt was added to an already significant budget deficit, causing international investors to question the sustainability of Irish sovereign debt. In November 2010, yields on Irish government debt reached an unsustainable 9%, which meant that the government was effectively locked out of international bond markets. Unable to borrow to fund the deficit, Ireland would have faced a devastating and abrupt adjustment to public services, as spending would have had to be brought in line with revenue immediately. So what happened? The EU IMF Economic Adjustment Programme for Ireland. To avoid this prospect, on November 29, 2010, the government negotiated a financial assistance package with the EU and the IMF totalling £85 billion, including, or was it euros, including a contribution of 17.5 billion from Ireland's owned resources. The financing provided by the programme partners is helping to cushion the very large shock which Ireland's economy and public finances have suffered as a result of the bursting of the bubble. It is helping to keep vital public services running. In July 2011, EU leaders agreed to reduce the interest rate and to extend the maturity on EU loans provided to Ireland under the programme. This decision brought about a significant saving to Irish taxpayers and has helped to improve the country's debt sustainability. Three main elements. The programme contains three main elements. First, a financial sector strategy is helping Ireland to have a smaller, better capitalised banking sector. Second, fiscal consolidation will put the country's public finances on a sustainable path over the medium term. Yeah, I'm nearly there.
Can I ask?
Sure.
Okay.
Just let me. And third, an ambitious structural reform agenda will restore competitiveness and strengthen the economy's growth potential. Although broad policy targets in these three areas are agreed between the programme partners, the Irish authorities, the EU, the IMF and the ECB, what's that? Is it European Central Bank? Implementation is a matter for the Irish government, which has a democratic mandate from the Irish people. So that's the bursting of the Irish bubble. So my comments, and I've posted this everywhere today, actually, I just say, bugger, not such a brighter future for Ireland. For whom exactly was this investment a runaway success? Doesn't look like it's been such a raging success for the poor old Irish 99%.
Well, hold on a second. Didn't John Key run away after he caused that situation a successful man?
Well...
So isn't he, in the very sense of the word, the runaway success?
Arguably. I mean, if you watch the Wolf from Wall Street, what it shows, it's all bubble and fluff. The only one's making any dough are the ones who are selling these dodgy products. And that's... Anyway, just to finish this off, just half a minute, so the question is, so in whose interest is New Zealand Prime Minister John Key working? Follow the dollar. So I linked straight to the New Zealand MP's Register of Pecuniary and Financial Interests, the Right Honourable John Key, National Helensville, 2 other companies and business entities, Little Nell Property Investment, Aspen, Colorado, Bank of America Banking. So I've sent that far and wide today. Yeah, so that's the question, folks. How much is our, Mr. Marvellous, the poodle from Wall Street, personally responsible for the stuff up of the Irish economy?
What is another question that needs answering is how much will he do the same here? Well, that will tell you. Well, that will tell you how responsible he is if he does the same thing here. And what I know from the Cullen Fund, for example, last year it got a prize for being the most innovative pension or whatever fund, national fund, and that tells me that they're dabbling in instruments. They know nothing about financial instruments, and that's 19 billion. We know that our national debt went from 8 billion to 60 billion over the last 7 years, and we know that as of 2011, we have 112 billion in derivatives on the books. And
this is like the financial equivalent of that scene in the movie The Mummy where they start to open the Book of the Dead and they go, "No, you don't know what you're playing with."
Well, the question is, that's the thing, is to ask these questions. But, as you know, Ev, back in 2008, here's me trying to take a private prosecution against John Key to show that he's an insider trader over Transrail, which he was. And the fact is that he's just brought his Wall Street ways with him. And when you see that film, The Wolf of Wall Street, I just couldn't believe it. It was no rules, no laws, no regulations, no ethics, no morals. It's absolute just market madness, free market capitalism at its literally most debauched. And these people are not used to anybody holding them account. And so this is a big deal. These questions, these hard questions need to be asked. Well, I've put it out there today. I've sent it directly to John Key, to National Party cabinet ministers, to MPs across the different parties, to all various mainstream media, key reporters, including Fran O'Sullivan. And I think Fran needs to do the right thing here. She needs to now follow up from her 2005 story. What happened, John Key? What went wrong? And how much are you personally responsible?
Did you know that in 2012, John Key went to London? He went to Europe. He signed us on in a new treaty with NATO. A new, not just a little bit elaboration on the old one, a brand spanking new treaty that we know nothing about. But he also went to visit London and the then governor of the Bank of England.
Sorry, Karen.
This guy, let me just break this down for you, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about a henchman, an economic hitman of the highest level. As in, we're talking about the right hand of the financial elite here. Oh, we need to do this? Let's send this guy in, Hey, have you ever seen Pulp Fiction? Where they accidentally shoot a guy in the face and they need somebody to come and clean it up and do all the business that everybody else is panicking and just really can't do? Because they're not a psychopath and they've got a conscience and they think about stuff before they do it?
Well, you do have to ask, why did John Key go from Wall Street to Molesworth Street in Wellington? And when you look at what he's done since he's been in power, particularly since he's been in power, the closeness of the ties with the United States It's really scary. And where does he get his mandate? All this, it's not just the closer ties with the banksters, but the whole military industrial machine tying us closer to NATO, etc. Well, when did the people of New Zealand say, yeah, that's what we want?
Well, as I said, Penny, the last time John Key had a mandate date was with John Banks in a cafe. All right, so we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you go anywhere. Hold on to your popcorn and your low-tax cigarettes. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinnie Eastwood Show. My very special guests joining me are, well, I'd probably say two of the women that I respect most in this country, which is actually quite high esteem to put it. We've got Evelyn Gilbert from Aotearoa, a wider perspective.wordpress.com, and Penny Bright at pennybright4mea.com. Wait, is it .com or .co.nz or is it .org?
.org.
It's the okay. I forget these things sometimes. If you Google Penny Bright for Mayor with the number 4, it should come up in a search result of some description. Not to mention, if you're listening to this on the Vinnie Eastwood Show archives, by the way, search names of people on the VinnieEastwoodShow.com. There's a little search bar in that little right up there in that little space where nobody seems to look when they ask me where are all the archives, Vinny. There's a little search thing there. You can put any topic, any name you want. I've interviewed shockingly large amounts of people. It's obscene. It's disgusting. It's sickening how many people I've interviewed. It'll blow your freaking mind daily if you want to keep listening to it. Anyway, back to the show. And enough with the shameless self-promotion. And we also have Penny Bright and Evelyn Gilbert with us today, and we're discussing the late Prime Minister John... sorry. The current Prime Minister... If you call him late Prime Minister, does that mean he's dead? Because that was where I was going with that. And I'm sorry. I'm not saying I want him to kill him myself. It's just if some magical miracle fairy heart attack machine designed by the CIA or something would just happen to fall into his lap during a speech of some description, I would be in mourning. I would be in mourning until the afternoon. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to kick his butt in Helensville. I'm standing against John Key in Helensville. It's a really simple argument, which is why would you waste your electorate vote in Helensville on John Key when he's going to be number 1 on the National Party list, and even if not one single person in Helensville voted for him, he'd still get into Parliament. So it's sort of like the 2-for-1 thing. Of course, we're on sort of different galaxies, which is a small technical point.
Speaking of which, at this particular moment, Evelyn has to go very shortly. So I'd like to hear from her while we still can, because let's face it, we all have personal lives. Things need to be attended to. So Evelyn, if you've got any choice phrases for the 9-year-olds out there, go for your life.
I agree with Penny that a waste for a vote for John Key would be a waste, and I hope that your show and the things that we can bring out over the next 2 months will help people make a better choice. And I salute Penny, and I hope she succeeds in Helensville. And I want to extend to her my offer that I would like to help Graham McCready in his fight against his fight against John Key, because I think you can really seriously make a case for him as insider trader and for being one of the people who are very high up in the global financial crisis. And it would be nice to be able to do some research with someone who is taking his grievances so well to court, and who was so successful in fighting John Banks together with you, Penny.
Well, just so that you know, on Bastille Day, the 14th of July, what is happening is Graham McCready will be filing in the Auckland District Court a great wad of documents in which John Key is named as basically an accessory after the fact regarding John Banks's electoral fraud, because that whole thing was disgraceful when you look at the numbers in Parliament, 6160. So the vote of dodgy John Banks was pivotal in order to get through the public finance mixed ownership model bill, with the privatisation of our electricity assets, the GCS bill, etc. And I mean, John Key refused point blank to read the police report. All this willful blindness. So the media have picked it up. He's been very successful getting media coverage, Graham, and full credit. But one of the things that he intends to append to his documents is a DVD of The Wolf of Wall Street, on the basis that this is effectively a form of evidence of how they were on Wall Street, which is where John Key came from. You know, no laws, no regulations.
John Key himself confessed to going to strip clubs, and he made it out like it was, oh well, that's what you did for your customers. But I had a wife and kids at home. But he was very much aware, and it is really when you are that high up, and when you've got that kind of business going and trading in billions and billions, and with this, we only know of 50 million that he allegedly made, but that puts him in a very elite group of only 202,000 people in the world. So that is, for all intents and purposes, an extremely successful stroke of good luck and selling derivatives and getting bonuses.
Oh, it's just the luck of the Irish, it is.
Yeah.
But the thing is, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, we know with Transrail that he did effectively insider trading when he was an MP, and he had undisclosed shares in Transrail. He tried to flush out commercially sensitive information, and which was declined by Treasury, and yet he still tried to flush out commercially sensitive information by making a complaint to the Ombudsman. And so talk about being quite persistent when it comes to feathering his own nest and filling his own pockets. Disgraceful. Well, I mean, I got absolutely all publicity about that back in 2008, but
I think that was me that gave you the publicity, Penny, and that was it.
I mean,
I'd only just started my YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been regurgitating that now so that people know. But the thing that occurs to me, I mean, when this same ex-Wall Street banker is in charge of the GCSB, he's running the country. So your potential, if you're that way inclined, for insider trading at the highest levels is extraordinary in my view, and that's why. And I've challenged John Key to his face when I made a submission on the GCSB bill, and that also is on YouTube and people can see it for themselves. But I said, this is an offer you probably haven't had so far today, Prime Minister. You show me yours and I'll show you mine. And everyone thinks, what? And I said, bank accounts. You open up your bank accounts. I want to see your trust accounts, your tax havens, your Swiss bank accounts. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear. You show me yours and I'll show you mine. And I still hold by that because, where would you be putting any dodgy dealings? Where would you be putting it?
Well, see, that's the first thing you got to ask him is, show me yours, I'll show you mine. And the second question is, where are you going to be putting it? I think that's appropriate. Evelyn's unfortunately had to leave us now. Speaking of... I've just taken this interview down a notch, Evan. I'm sorry. Now, what we're going to talk about now, Penny, I really want your take on this. Now, if John Key's a sociopathic, scumbaggery economic hitman and he's here to destroy the country, precisely in what way is he planning to destroy it?
Well, again, you know me, I'm very big on the facts and evidence. I want to know more about the amount that New Zealand is exposed to derivatives. I think 112 billion. When did New Zealand start getting involved in derivatives? How much has John Key helped to push that along? How's it been done? Who's involved? How did they do it? What does it mean for we 99%ers? What does it mean? And I don't have those enough facts at my fingertips right now, but that's okay, because what I do know will help me ask some more very hard questions.
I have a real difficulty thinking about this quite clearly, because it's a financial market. Now, everybody, when they think about financial markets, they think complicated. They think huge amounts of maths and things of that nature. Oh, I can't understand it. I can't understand. And what Evelyn told me the other day is that there was actually a quote from the the Auditor General or something like that about KNP or some company.
KPMG?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That their records and financial trading and everything was so complex that they actually had to hire somebody from that company in order to check their own records for them, and they said they were fine.
Well, that's an actual really scary thing in itself. I mean, I've already told you, in my considered opinion, our Auditor General, Lynn Provost, is corrupt, because she's a shareholder in Sky City, and she didn't disclose that when I asked her to do an inquiry into a matter relating to Sky City. And that is just unbelievable, but it's a fact, and Parliament has done nothing about that, so how corrupt is our Parliament? But what seems to happen is that so much auditing appears to be contracted out to the pinstripe mafia, the major accountancy firms, that's Deloitte, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers and Ernst & Young. Well, hello, it's this same pinstripe mafia that is up to their eyeballs in tax, tax avoidance, etc. So that was one of the big scandals. And on the one hand, they would have their staff helping to work out packages by which their clients could avoid tax, and the next minute they're doing the auditing. Well, how the hell does that work? How is that not a major conflict of interest? So, in my view, what we need are genuine, proper, decent, public-spirited auditors, ones who work directly we need an independent commission against corruption, but we need decent people, pay them well. I've got no problem with that. Pay them well, but people who can be trusted and who do have a moral compass. Because I'm telling you, these people, the Wall Street wolves and poodles, they have no moral or ethical compass. That just doesn't exist on planet Key, in my view.
Which is called psychopathy.
Well, it's of real concern. But but the other thing, and I'll come back to this because I'm really pushing this one as well. Well, we're looking at Ireland. We've got the details there about how John Key said it was a great success, and then about 2 or 3 years later, Ireland goes down the gurgler. But what people need to remember, and I need as many people as possible to pick up the ball here and ask this question themselves: what role did John Key play when he was the head of derivatives for Merrill Lynch and a foreign exchange advisor to the New York Federal Reserve back in November 1999 when the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed?
And let's qualify that as well, because he was handpicked for the role. Handpicked no less by some guy who's colloquially known, Reed, I think it is, as the most corrupt capitalist on earth. Like second, what's his name? George Soros or something is number 2 on the list. This guy's number 1, and he's apparently John Key's mentor who got him onto that board. There's a whole bunch of how business is done with backroom deals and everything, Penny. It's done over a whiskey, or it's done over personal choice or preference, and all these little wolves kind of like vying for the same carcass kind of thing. And there's a couple of big wolves on top that occasionally will chuck a scrap out to one of the little puppies. That's kind of how this works. And yeah. We're talking about a man who's not just the right hand. He's been groomed for the position for a very, very long time. He's shown himself to be a diligent scumbag and incapable of doing the right thing to save his life.
Well, it is really interesting because my understanding is that John Key has since sort of put his hands up and like, oh no, like it's nothing to do with me, but. What was pivotal to the global financial crisis was the fact that the derivatives market was completely without regulation. And the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act in November 1991, that left the derivatives market completely without regulation. So we know John Key's involved up to his eyeballs in derivatives. We know he's at a pivotal place, at the highest levels of the banksterdom. At this pivotal position, pivotal time, what role did he play, John Key, in the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act? I know for a fact that his CEO at Merrill Lynch at the time, whose name temporarily escapes me, but he has subsequently sort of repented and said that, now I don't really think that we did do the right thing. And Clinton, who was the president who allowed this to happen, he's now said that, we made a bit of a mistake there with the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. Well, meanwhile, the whole world has basically been hugely affected by this global financial crisis. So, Mr. Popularity John Key, who must be the most spin-doctored politician on the planet, God help me, there's this side to him, and we're talking truth and facts here, which show that he's just a walking disaster when it comes to the 99%, the ordinary people. He's a disaster.
What occurs to me now is that he'd make a really good snitch. Imagine how much dirty business he could give, all the gossip on all of these big elite scumbaggery banksters and things of that nature,
But why would he want to do that?
Well, if the alternative was penalty of death, he'd cry us a derivative.
Well, anyway, like I say, there are things moving on the accountability front. So, like I say, on the 14th of July, Bastille Day, Graham McCready will be filing in the Auckland District Court court papers that are charging John Key as being an alleged accessory after the fact regarding John Banks's electoral fraud case. And also Inspector Mark Benefield, who was basically the inspector in charge, he's also being charged. So, at last, someone's sort of showing their teeth and actually doing a bit of serious biting. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in court, but to be fair to Graham, he has been getting significant success in getting matters into court where others have failed. And a lot of people now sort of see Graham as sort of, a bit of a folk hero for having a go and having success. So, there's been a small group of us that have been helping, but I put the word out now on, I think it's Friday, the 14th of July, between 12 noon and 2 o'clock, we'll be having a presence, a little protest outside the Auckland District Court in Albert Street, and Graham will be filing his court paperwork. So hopefully there'll be a bit of a media scrum there. And John Key, just like John Banks, hopefully will learn that he also is not a protected species, and that although that may have been his background in terms of where he's come from, Wall Street, suddenly we now may see a changing scene.
I am not too sure about that, Penny, because, again, what happens with people when they're in powerful positions, it creates a vacuum around them and it puts pressure on everybody beneath them in their position of authority. That usually gets them resentful and often willing to betray them and take their place, even if they're a sociopath like them. If they don't fear them because they're going to go down without a fight and whatnot, they'll do it. So here's another question. Once John Key goes down, eventually, what scumbag's going to take his place for the bankers in the 1%?
Well, the thing is that, I mean, the job of people like ourselves, who are whistleblowers for the 99%, we own the public don't ever get anything unless we make a fuss. That's it. We don't work in pinstripe suits lobbying at 30,000 feet. We've got to make a huge fuss about the issues. And in my view, this situation is becoming similar to New South Wales in the late 1980s, where there were these massive scandals about police corruption. And as a result of the huge public outcry, that is what helped New South Wales get their Independent Commission Against Corruption. Now, it's not all perfect in New South Wales, but I tell you what, they've got some better systems in place than we have in New Zealand, and that's what we need. We need a legislative framework that's going to help ensure a lot more accountability and transparency than what we've got at the moment. Yeah, that's what we need. We need a legislative framework.
Well, because at the moment we're butterflied like a barbecue fried chicken.
Well, but what's good about it is that I think actually John Rome's portrait of a Prime Minister, the unauthorised biography of John Key, it actually has done us all a favour, because what it's done, it has actually focused on his banker background. And of course, with the Wolf of Wall Street movie, and I really do recommend people, if you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. Please.
It is the first movie Martin Scorsese has made since, like, whenever, that has actually held my attention the entire film and didn't lapse for 1 second. It is an amazing thrill ride of debauchery and scumbaggery.
And it's based on a true story, Jordan Belfort. And he, prior to the financial crisis in 2008, he was working in Wall Street where the brokers got 1% commission, and that's the area where that John Key would have been working in, that same area. But you need to go and see it for yourselves. I tell you what, it is an eye opener. It's stunning. It really is stunning, scary. It's like, oh my God, You couldn't make this up.
Well, you really can't. I mean, let's give an analogy, okay? People go like, oh, why would somebody be such a scumbag and destroy the entire world's economy and enslave everybody ruthlessly with massive amounts of debt that they made up so they can just live in palaces and things of that nature, and everybody else is just an enslaved parasite that they can kill at will? Why would somebody do that? I wouldn't do that. Well, imagine for a moment that you're an incredibly intelligent, ruthless criminal sociopath who hates the very existence of human life if you can't control it. Does it suddenly make a hell of a lot more sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? That's the reason why it's been confusing all this time. I wasn't thinking like a sociopath. Silly me.
Well, I mean, I think that this is going to be quite a pivotal election. I do. But you see, what I love about it is Team Key, which means the rest are lackeys. It's so much dependent on Shonky John. And as more and more people start to question and get an understanding of his background, and I mean,
Well, can I make an interjection here, Penny? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we're coming to break any second now. Who do they turn to? And this is the problem, because I don't even believe in that kind of mentality of who do you turn to save you. I believe you should save yourself and actually take some personal responsibility for protecting your country from scumbaggery. All right? That's basically what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm taking personal responsibility to protect my country from filth that will destroy it. Okay? What is your excuse, ladies and gentlemen? How many days a year do you sit back and not participate? How many days a year? How many years does it take in between election cycles? Do you think that waiting 1,000 days before you tick a box on a piece of paper and give it to some people to count for you will make the difference and stop people who have no conscience and no rules that they follow from destroying your nation? Do you think that's a worthy accomplishment? Do you think it's actually going to achieve anything in and of itself? You need to get real, ladies and gentlemen. all the methodologies of participation which the government allows for you and mainstream society has for you. Hey, look, you can text in and vote this way. You can do that and this and that and the other. Everything that they're telling you to do is only so that they can channel your energy, okay, into something that they can control. And
you've got to be a little bit careful with that line of argument. Otherwise, it's sort of like, so why bother? Why
no. The opposite. Okay. The opposite. I'm saying you don't need that system to make a difference. You can go out and make a hell of a lot more difference yourself. Do these things as well, but understand that they are only 1 out of 100 things that you might be thinking of doing in between election cycles.
Well, what I love is, I have found myself that...
but Penny, we'll come back to this. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. We still have my consort and cohort and various other nice adjectives guest, Penny Bright, the brightest woman I know, and she's the person who says to John Key says, "Go away, Penny," and Penny goes, "I'll see you in Helensville," and you've got to use that, Penny. Damn it, Penny! Over the years, I have given you gold. I have given you diamonds. I have given you platinum. Please use them.
I'll see you in Helensville.
I'll see you in Helensville.
Well, the fact that here he was when he was opposed to Helen Clark, and he was actually in the Helensville electorate.
Yeah, well, after he turned in, it really became more like hell. And my very special other guest that we have joining us from down the line, who has been driving around all over the place with his campaign vehicle that he needs to earn his daily bread, Ian Parker. Welcome to the show, mate.
G'day, Vinny. Nice to catch up again, mate. Good to see you still putting the hard questions out.
Yeah, I don't really ask the hard questions. I more like have this this little radio show as a mutual whinging session for people who actually at least know what's going on and really effed off that nobody else does, and they just seem to be enslaved and hate us and abuse us and things like that. So I just provide this little sort of opposite platform for us,
Oh, mate, I think you do a great service in giving a lot of people a voice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well
done. Nobody else is doing it, so the responsibility falls to the one with the power. What can I say? That's what power's for. It's for helping people, not for taking stuff off people and getting more power. But anyway, speaking of taking stuff off people and getting more power, the Prime Minister! He's just the most disgusting. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm becoming extremely unprofessional politically. You may have noticed. But it's not so much about facts and evidence now. It's just more about, are they a scumbag or are they not? That's the only factor of evidence that I really care about. After that, it becomes all about the abuse in their direction, preferably, because it makes me feel better. I hope it makes them feel worse, but I can't, you can't hope for everything.
Well, thankfully, there's lots of on-the-record evidence to support that, Vinny. It doesn't have to be just allegations.
It's ironic. I could make stuff up off the top of my head and make it the worst that I could possibly imagine. It would probably turn out to have lots of evidence behind it.
Probably better to start off the other way. That's how I prefer to do it, Vinny. But
generally, but my way's more fun.
Can bite you on the bum sometimes. But very keen to hear what developments with Ian. We're certainly both on the same page regarding the real hard question, which is what was the role of John Key in the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, which left the derivatives market without regulation. And I asked that question back in about 2011. Funnily enough, I never got a reply. But this is the real hard question that mainstream media needs to be forced to ask, and we just need to ask it ourselves and keep asking it.
Yeah, g'day, Penny, that's for sure. And especially, as you know, he's trying to hide a lot of his past with the recent book that he put out. I actually took the time to read the financial section within it, and just to confirm something from the excerpts that they put in the New Zealand Herald, that the word derivatives doesn't actually appear in it.
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Well, but you can cry me a derivative. Cry me a derivative.
Because, as you know, Penny, when he turned up on the scene in 2005 or 2008, he was actually recorded on the record quite often, skiding about his exploits in the heart of international high finance, and quite openly admits to his dealings as being to the head of Merrill Lynch's European derivatives division. But
he actually refers to his $5 million Parnell mansion as the house that Merrill built.
That's a fact.
But anyway,
I hear it's distinctly different from Groove Armada's The House That Funk Built.
And yes, and now that derivatives have become very much a dirty word, I believe the recent book is sort of an attempt to, people are beginning to look a little bit more into his past, and it's an attempt to disclose a little bit more but to hide certain elements that he doesn't want disclosed. So it's
well, it's interesting because just today I rediscovered the 2005 article Fran O'Sullivan did when he's basically saying sort of how wonderful Ireland was and how he encouraged people to go there because the tax rate was only 10%, blah blah, and what a huge success for an investment it had been. So I did a bit more research because I did know that the Irish economy had gone clunk, and I found some really damning facts. So that's what we've done earlier on in the show. It's like, okay, it was all wonderful. Well, then it turned to mush. And the question is, how much is John Key personally responsible for the stuff up of the Irish economy? Because it looks like he's very responsible, in my view.
Oh, he had a large part in it, of course. Like and when he turned up here in 2005, and when they got elected in 2008, he was pushing hard to have the same zero tax interest rate charged upon foreign funds earned offshore and moved here, and was claiming that we would make income out of all of the bankers moving their accountants and their lawyers here and moving their back offices here.
Tax haven, basically, eh?
Yeah, he was going to set up a foreign lending tax haven, just like they did in Ireland, basically take advantage of the corporate sweetheart tax rates. And, of course, Ireland let them in to take advantage of the zero tax rate upon foreign investments. The money moved there, laundered through the place. And, of course, what happens when most of these deals finish up, the accountants and the lawyers and so forth, after they've done their tax accounting, actually claimed a rebate from the nation. So all of the income they were supposed to make from taxing these 5,000 new workers, financial system workers, it just turned into pie in the sky. They hollowed and gutted the place.
Well,
they had them hook, line and sinker, and then they used the rebate. I find the interesting order there.
Yeah. And so now, of course, Ireland's economic sovereignty is just completely taken out of its hands. It's in the hands of the lenders, although the actions the actions were completely predatory. But somebody within the Labour Party, the National Party, must have thought it was going to be pretty unpalatable to the constituents of New Zealand, because it seems to have gone on the back burner when he was pushing royally hard there at a few. Fran O'Sullivan actually reported it at a few business meetings, stating that we need to get this thing done by such and such, and we don't need to go through the Magna Carta sort of thing. It's just, I'm telling Jury Brownlee to make it happen, but it hasn't happened. So I do think that someone within the National Party thought it was going to be too unpalatable if they pushed it too hard.
This reminds me of a story that was told by a man named Michael Rupert from thewilderness.com. He's committed suicide now. He was exposing a whole bunch of stuff with the world ending and whatnot. And he was an investigator. And what he was doing was investigating the Bush crime family connections and things of that nature. And he had all these documents and these books that people had published, right out in the open, that fully proved that these were basically a bunch of criminals. The American presidency and the lines of which are just basically a criminal gang. And he mentioned this to somebody in Congress, and he said, if anybody reads this, there'll be a revolution. And the guy in Congress said, yeah, but the American people don't read. And the exact same thing, I believe, is true here. All the facts and all the evidence about John Key are totally out there. They're totally published. They're easy to find. But the people don't read.
Well, no. Well, what I'm finding is that, just tonight, the fact that I sent out a press release sort of far and wide. You see, I'm having great fun on Kiwi blog because I'm finding it's a really, really effective way of getting your message across. It costs you nothing. And, of course, the more semi-hysterical the response to what you're posting, usually it's a very good sign that you're absolutely on track because, as you once said, Vinny, you don't cop the flack unless you're over the target. But, so I've posted this up on Kiwi blog. They're asking this hard question of John Key, how much was he personally responsible for stuffing up the Irish economy? And there's not been that many dislikes. I think it's been, that's usually a sign that people are sort of slightly stunned. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people reading it. And I sent it to John Key and all the cabinet members and across the different political parties and to all different mainstream media. So, yes, including Fran O'Sullivan, because I think she needs to be honest and she needs to do the follow-up because there is another story now that we've seen what's happened to Ireland. It was totally the opposite to how it was, when it was, at the time, it might have been all fine and dandy, but it just has turned into an absolute disaster.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, it's, I believe our media, mainstream media, have a great part in it. They're meant to be the in-depth researchers on behalf of the people as the Fourth Estate to give us a balanced information to make our decisions from. And I used to think...
By the way, I just had my microphone muted to stifle my groans of cackling debauched laughter. Go ahead.
I used to, when I first discovered all of this, I used to think it was that most every MP was corrupt and most every member of the media was corrupt. But over the years, I've come more to the conclusion that it's more a laziness that's taken advantage of by the senior elements of banking. They know how to tweak every one of our failings as humans, pretty much. People out there seeking the quickest way to payday, I believe, is probably the biggest reason why we're not getting detailed information. Most of it, I've trawled through line by line through every piece of regulation now relevant to our financial system. And you don't have to dig too deep to be able to see where what it causes is completely at odds with what the front end of our parliamentary apparatus is telling us we're trying to achieve. And so you got to ask yourself then, so why don't our media, our media, I believe, those that have made it to senior positions have been let there because they are financially illiterate more than them being seen to be financially literate, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Most of our corporate media now are majority stakeholder owned by senior elements of banking institutions.
Sure. Yeah.
So the likes of Sean Plunkett and Duncan Garner and those guys that now think they have judged themselves to be some sort of New Zealand's highest form of intelligence. They're
basically the same dude as like Duncan Plunkett.
Yeah, and they have not an ounce of financial literacy. Duncan Garner makes comments like when he was on tour with John Key over in America that he was surprised at the likes of Timothy Geithner and that actually took the time to talk to him and stuff, and he's joking around going, well, they're talking all of this banking stuff and let's face it, that's a whole other man's language, Well, if Duncan Garner wants to claim to be the senior most form of intelligence in the country, well, how about he takes the time to find out just what that language is they're talking?
I mean, how many people with English as a second language are mainstream news journalists in New Zealand, like primetime anchors and everything like that, who can't speak English properly? None? Oh yeah, that's right. You know why? Because it comes with the job. You got to do what you've got to do.
Yeah, no, very much. A lot of them have probably realised that if you want to stay in the industry, there's certain areas you go and there's certain areas you don't.
Yeah. Well, just on the, because, you will have done more research in this area than me, Ian. In terms of New Zealand's exposure to derivatives, well, back in June 2012, it was about 112 billion. Do you have any update on that figure?
I haven't looked at the actual figure, but when you're starting to talk those sorts of sums, you don't really need to be too specific, Penny. But derivatives are basically hedging instruments that they use to suppose it. Yeah, on anything to basically
gambling.
What are they basically to try and?
No. I came up with the perfect explanation for this. Okay. When you go into a casino and you give them a couple of $100 and they give you all these chips back, but the chips are numbered like 500, 1,000 and 10 and 20s and things of that nature. And there's a hell of a lot more chips in terms of numbers than the cash you gave over. The cash you gave over are the real assets. These numbers and all these chips that you get back that don't really exist. Okay? That's the derivatives.
Okay, well, here's a
However, the worst thing is these chips actually count as dollar for dollar what you've put in, not equal to what you've put in, but each of them is worth what they say on the chip, kind of thing.
Well, here's a definition of derivatives. That's from I think it's commondemocracy.info. Derivatives, the unregulated global casino for banks. Okay, short story. Pick something of value. Make bets on the future value of something. Add contract, and you have a derivative. Banks make massive profits on derivatives, and when the bubble bursts, chances are the taxpayer will end up with the bill. This visualizes the total coverage for derivatives notional, similar to insurance companies' total coverage for all cars. So I thought that was quite a handy little...
it's like to me, it's like a second layer of insurance on something that's already insolvent. You'd probably be aware of the historical admissions recently made in the Bank of England's first quarterly report of this year, Penny, where they basically come out and said that what's been told in the textbooks of economics around the world, especially for the last 60-odd years, especially in the Anglo-Saxon heritage nations, that from which all of our young, best and brightest people take their information to become advisors to our government and the likes, that the basis of which they've been telling us that banking works on the intermediation of already existing pools of liquidity has been completely wrong, and that it's basically just a system, the prudential reserve, where those in charge of administering the money supply weigh up what the purchasing power they authorise, basically to ensure that there's things on the other side of the deal to be purchased. Because if you authorise more purchasing power, then there are things to be purchased. Anything past that point enters the realm of counterfeiting. And so basically, when you accept somebody's currency, what you want to have confidence in is that you know, for your goods and services, you've just accepted some deferred purchasing power. And if you can't be confident that when you come to claim on your side of the deal that whoever gave it to you has things to purchase, you've just given them something for nothing. Well, the whole banking system has been operating on creating massive bundles of something for nothing to sell to people, and ultimately it's insolvent. And with the interest added, it just all falls in a hole. And then when people started to realise that these financial investments that the banks had sold them had no value, because there wasn't enough things to be purchased in the world for all of the purchasing power that had been created via credit, the banks went, oh, hang on, sweet, we'll come up with these. And John Key admits that he wasn't the one coming up with all of these ideas. He's on the record as saying he was the one in charge of the people coming up with these ideas. Yeah. So they all basically went, oh, look here, guys, no need to panic. We'll create these new products that will be like insurance upon the already layer of insolvent banking. So basically, they created these massive loan books again of it was basically massive balls of counterfeiting that the rating agencies then said actually falsely rated and then they sold them on to all the investment funds of the common pool people's investment funds of the world. And it was derivatives, when everybody began to realise that these derivatives had no backing, that actually caused and brought down and undermined the entire financial system, causing the collapse in 2008. And so John Key mentions about, you know, a good trader has to have impeccable timing, and, you know, in the excerpts from his book. Well, he had impeccable timing. He was part of building this massive Ponzi, this pump and dump Ponzi pyramid scam, and when it was getting a bit hot, and then he got out, he cashed out, you see, and now he turns around and makes out like, when I went back,
Yeah.
This reminds me of a really lame joke I heard when I was a small boy. You know what you call a chicken in a suit of armour?
Nope.
Impeccable.
Yeah, no, impeccable timing, mate. These senior elements of banking have.
I can imagine him flying the coop.
Yeah.
With the ghost that laid the golden egg. How many analogies can I stretch out of this? Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Another interesting development in recent times is back in 2007, prior to the last global financial crisis, the Bank of International Settlements, which is termed to be the central bank of central banks, it's the end of the line of the discount wholesale credit supply, which is at the heart of the private central banking network. They put out a report last time around in about 2007 stating that they believe the whole thing, openly stating that, you know, that the Bank of International Settlements warns of a Great Depression approaching sort of thing. To me, that was a dog whistle to the fact that, hey boys, we've created all of this counterfeit credit that we've been receiving interest off for a long time now. It's about to be realised that most of it was based up on unrepayable bull dust, that there wasn't enough on the other side of the deal to ever repay. We're going to about to start putting up interest rates because they claim, you know, this interest rate inflation targeting is basically what is caused by excess quantity of credit. Well, who does it assist when you actually increase the cost of that credit as a means to stem the demand for it? You're basically rewarding the criminals that allowed it to happen. And so
isn't this how Wall Street was supposed to work? I mean, am I confused?
Yes, well, yeah, no, this is in truth is how it works. It's all a pump and dump pyramid scheme. But prior to the last crisis, the Bank of International Settlements basically made a loud call that it's all about to collapse. To me, it was a dog whistle to all of their lower elements that had assisted them to. It was like saying, hey, we've got enough purchasing power from interest now. Now we're going to start calling in some loans, and they'll claim that it's in the interest of keeping stability in the system, to reduce the demand of the peasants who have been taking out too much credit. We'll put up the cost of credit, despite it was them. Everyone trusts them to do the base credit accounting to keep it all in balance. That's what they claim we pay them the interest for, is basically their fee for at the moment as being the admin of the money system. But just in recent times, they just released their latest annual report, and once again they're screaming from the high heavens that instead of where are we? BIS, an organisation representing the world's main central bank, said the overall somewhat gloomy message from the central bankers was that the world is drunk on easy money, has already forgotten the lessons of recent years. Instead of adding to productive capacity, large firms prefer to buy back shares and engage in mergers and acquisitions. The temptation to postpone adjustment can prove irresistible, especially when times are good and financial booms sprinkle the fairy dust of illusory riches, the report said.
Whoa. What lessons of previous years is he talking about? The bailout all the bankers that got us into debt and give them all golden parachutes lesson, and no criminal charges of any kind, and not ask for a single share in the banks that the people are bailing out? Is that the lesson we didn't learn?
That's the lesson we didn't learn, and the report goes on to say the consequences is the growth model that relies too much on debt, both private and public, and which over time sows the seeds of its own demise. So that's just in their recent annual report. So to me, again, the Bank of International Settlements, which basically, as I explained to you the other day, Vinny, the Anglo-Saxon heritage private central banking system, the senior elements or institutions of it are all owned by, you can trace them back, and it's been done by the likes of even Oxfam now, who have traced it back, the cross ownership of everything, and basically, and they've announced,
have they? Yeah. So they've got something current because then that sort of stuff's very helpful.
Yep, no, and they've announced that they can trace it back, the cross ownership, to 85 people owning 50% of the wealth of the world. 85 people.
Wow,
that's Oxfam.
That's obscene.
Indeed,
and so those institutions are all owned by the family trusts of the ultra intergenerational wealth families of the world. They own at the moment what they call, when you trace back the wholesale credit discount chain, because that's basically how business operates at the moment under the This is in the Anglo-Saxon heritage nations. Like the Eastern nations operate a whole different philosophy of money. It's called public central banking, where they basically take the collateral of their natural resource collateral and type it in, the value of it, into their own accounts, and then spend it directly into circulation, free of private bank interest, like the likes of Russia. China's a bit of a...
is that why we keep picking on those people, is it?
It is, yeah. Basically, those baddies over there in the Eastern nations, that's the ultimate fault line in international high finance, is the difference between a lot of people. We think the left and the right in this country is like Labour, look after the worker, National, look after the business. People have forgotten that left and right is actually two ends of a spectrum of economic organisation, and the very dividing fault line is private profit central banking, where the private banks control the base accountancy of credit and the issuance of currency in your money system. Or on the left, for any party to be truthfully claiming to be of the left, they have to practice what they call at-cost mode of public central banking. That's where they take because that's basically all the private banks. What we absurdly do at the minute in this country is we've contracted out the base accountancy of our credit and the issuance of our currency to the Anglo-Saxon heritage private central banking network. They take the collateral of our natural resources and our labour, our natural resources, and as collateral that gives value to the credit that they type into their account over there in London or the US Federal Reserve, and then they loan that money back to us as interest-bearing loans to circulate as the currency in our money system.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to go to break. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, at thevinnieeastwoodshow.com. This is a listener-supported broadcast, so if you want to see it continue, please go to the homepage and start donating either through the Kiwi Bank account or the PayPal, or you could just message me and we can figure out a way to get some other thing if you hate, bank accounts and PayPal and all of that kind of jazz. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment. It's the John Key special, and we have had three very special guests, two of which are still with us. Penny Bright from pennybrightformea.org. I got it correct this time. And Ian Parker as well, who as yet doesn't have much of a website to speak of.
I do actually, Vinny. Public credit. If anybody types into Google public credit or bust, they will come up with my blog, I'm sure. Public credit or bust.blogspot.co.nz, I think it is.
Public credit or bust.blogspot.co.nz, you say?
Yes.
It's a mouthful.
Yep. It does quite well.
Here's the problem. You can't exactly be a financial analyst and do something to the level that you do. And if I might say so, Ian, in terms of like the financial system, how it operates in New Zealand and things of that nature, in terms of all the people that I've interviewed in my career, you seem to have the best handle on it out of anybody that I know. And it astounds me that you... Well, no, actually, it makes sense that very few people have heard of you.
Yeah, well, I didn't, mate. I just made sure. I've seen too many sort of step up and go off half-cocked. Russell Norman comes to mind when he started talking about printing or issuing bonds and buying our own bonds to rebuild Christchurch, which is a bloody good idea, but they jumped all over him and shot him down as printing money is going to be inflationary and the likes. And then when it came to the crunch, he couldn't explain the various means of monetary easing, that there's a number, three of them in the main, and two of them favour the banks, and the one he was talking about doesn't. But he didn't know enough about it to explain it. He got all excited and sort of jumped in with both feet, and he wasn't up to it. So I just I'd observed that over the years and made sure that when I poked my head up, I was going to be ready, so they couldn't ridicule me off the face of the planet, basically.
So are you actually ready, or is this just like a little bit of a looking over the trenches, just going, will they shoot me this time? I'll take that as a yes.
Obviously, when you hit the radar big time, you'll come under more pressure from them. But at the minute, put it this way, it's a creeping, a growing awareness. I'm growing more of a following by the day. And unfortunately, a lot of it on my blog and stuff is from countries and throughout Europe and America, and it's America, Russia, and the likes. Show more of an interest in this than most New Zealanders at present, sadly. Most of the traffic on my blog is from offshore, especially in European nations. A lot of traffic from the Ukraine and the likes, where they're actually getting their throats seriously cut by this thing.
Well, we are allowed 1,000 times more pesticide in our water than they are in the Ukraine and the European Union.
It's we better move on with this more solution-based side of things, so that people don't go away and cut their wrists and think there are no solutions. The bottom line is, at the moment, like I said, our banking system is basically controlled by what they call the Anglo-Saxon heritage private central banking model, where private interests run and administer our base accountancy of credit and the issuance of our currency, and issue it as interest-bearing loans in its entirety, with the interest meant to be a fair and reasonable fee charged by them for their prowess in keeping what is authorised in balance with what there is to cover it. And they always cook the books, of course, in self-interest by creating more credit and issuing it as interest-bearing loans than there is the means of repayment. And then they blame it all on us, rack up the interest rates to or start calling in loans, and then cause a recession for which they use the purchasing power they've gained from the interest to walk in and buy up under receivership all the distressed assets that we've slaved to build. That's pretty much the scheme. When you go to the eastern nations, like Russia, the India, the Chinas, they have a different philosophy on money. They practice public central banking, where they take the natural resource collateral that gives value to the deal, type it into their own accounts, and then spend it directly into circulation to fund the essentials of life, basically build their essential infrastructure and everything without the impost of interest. So they presently do it. That's how they operate their systems. Russia is a fully functioning public central banking nation. Japan is, the likes of Argentina now. It's only the Anglo-Saxon heritage nations. But here's the kicker. What they don't really want us to know and look back, they always talk about looking forward, is in the Anglo-Saxon heritage central banking network of nations. They don't want us to look back, because you'll find that every Anglo-Saxon heritage nation, including America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, when we first funded our state housing project with our own sovereign dollars, just given value by the fact we had the trees, the materials and the labour, and we just needed to make that happen, basically the natural resources and the labour, by issuing the means, the tokens of exchange, so that we could pay people to make it happen. And we've also done that. And in those nations, when we've practiced public central banking, there has never been, especially Canada, between 1935 and 1974, if you study their history, practicing fully functioning public central banking, they built all of their railways, their dams, their infrastructure. They only had a debt of, at the end of that period, a small debt owed to themselves, which didn't really matter because it wasn't owed to foreigners at interest, of $18 billion. And then some scumbag fell for this trick that, we can get cheaper credit from this private central banking model and start borrowing it from them. And their debt today now stands, that's from 1974, when they fell for the trick of getting cheaper credit from these people. Their national debt is now $685 billion. And New Zealand, I was looking at some interesting figures in New Zealand the other day, around 1984, from a very good research outfit called Kafka. That's the Campaign Against the Foreign Control of Aotearoa. They keep tracks on the foreign ownership of New Zealand's economy, and they just said in 1984 we only had a national debt of $18 billion. Now that we've fallen for this cheap credit from this private central banking network, the debt that has been originated in this country that is owed to them sits at some $440 billion, on which we're paying $39 billion a year in interest. So basically what it comes down to now is that the person on the average wage in this country, everybody sort of focuses on domestic income tax. People in this country on the average wage are losing purchasing power from their income straight away, flowing out in foreign dividends and interest in this country to about 50% of their purchasing power from income. That's how bad it is. So we need to do an audit. The private central bankers that our government has contracted out the base accountancy of our credit and issuance of our currency to this private central banking network And the contract states that their job is meant to be to keep inflation low and price stability in place. Well, to me, can be proven that they are not fulfilling their contract in both of those means, because they removed, in 1999, they removed the residential land portion of housing from the Consumer Price Index, which is meant to be what measures inflation as a sort of an alarm bell to that they're issuing too much credit.
The canary in the coal mine.
It is. So what it did by removing the land portion of housing from the Consumer Price Index, it basically allowed the banks to pump credit for us to trade houses beyond what the normal course of business could ever support without ringing the bells that they claim. So, there's all of this hoo-ha about whether it's immigrants that are causing, no doubt they're causing a little bit of the inflated housing prices in this country, to beyond, what the average wage can support. But this thing here is not even getting looked at, because it's like the banks in this country are untouchable. You just can't look at them. And so to me, there needs to be an auditing of our national debt from somebody that obviously knows how it works to begin with, that has to do the auditing. There are plenty of high-level academics around the world now, especially since the global financial crisis, that have come out, the likes of Joseph Stiglitz, David C. Courtin, these high-level guys, that if you could get them to come in and do an independent audit of our national debt, I'm sure they would find that these guys are in breach of their contract. And basically, we should just tell them to piss off and go back to... because our public debt, our government debt, can basically be annulled almost overnight, because they only practice a Prudential Reserve base, accountancy of credit. It's just a book entry ledger system, basically, of accountancy. So we could say, they authorise the value of the debt they lent us at the government level. We could overnight type that into our account and say, well, you said it had this value, and we can say goodbye to them and wipe our frigging national debt overnight and start practicing fully functioning public credit banking. And then start, basically using our natural resource collateral to spend directly our own sovereign dollars into circulation without foreign bank interest. And it's possible, it's been done before, and it's happening in most of the Eastern, or the BRIC block of nations. They call them the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China. Japan also practices fully functioning public central banking. A completely different philosophy on money, and it's just an alternative that the owners of our corporate media and the owners of our private banking in this country don't even want us to know exists. Like, I'll give you the auditing, the contract. Our Auditor General's office is meant to audit these people, right, to make sure that they're delivering on their contract of price stability and low inflation. And I'll give you an idea from the Auditor General's office from 2007. This is the forward to the 2007 New Zealand Auditor General report, Effectiveness of the New Zealand Debt Management Office. And this gives you an explanation of what the New Zealand Debt Management Office is and just how competent our auditors are. It makes very clear how dependent upon the second-hand advice the New Zealand Public Service are, and how susceptible to being misled that we are. The forward states, the New Zealand Debt Management Office, NZDMO, is a unit within the Treasury. It is responsible for the efficient management of the Crown's debt and associated financial assets within an appropriate risk management framework. Its broader responsibilities include providing capital market advice and financial transaction services to other agencies of the Crown. In carrying out a performance audit of the NZDMO, and remembering this is our Auditor General, my overall objective was to determine the NZDMO's level of performance under the authority of the Minister of Finance in managing the Crown's public debt and financial asset portfolios. Given the specialist technical functions of the NZDMO, I sought expert technical assistance with the audit. I appointed KPMG under Section 33(1) of the Public Audit Act 2001 to carry out the performance audit on my behalf under Section 16(1) of the Act. The material in my audit report is of a very technical nature because of its specialist functions undertaken by the NZDMO. The non-technical reader can be assured that the audit did not identify any fundamental concerns with the performance of the NZDMO. So there you go. We've got our Auditor General stating that he doesn't have the ability to audit the New Zealand Debt Management Office, which our Reserve Bank has contracted out the accountancy of our base credit and issuance of currency to, and yet in the very last paragraph he assures us that we have nothing to worry about. And when I suggest to anybody you take the name KPMG and type it into Google and put the word fines after it, just as if you do at the minute with most every major international banking institution in the world, you'll see a massive list of where these institutions have colluded with the senior elements of international high finance to construct pyramid frauds time and time again. So we basically have a bunch of...
This reminds me of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you have an entire book full of very, very scary creatures and hazards of the universe, and on the back you just have "Don't Panic" written on it.
Yeah, it's the Keystone bloody cops, mate. That's what it is.
Well, but I mean, the thing is that I've made contact with Professor Prem Seeker, who's based at Essex University, and he's a professor of accounting. And if you Google his name, I mean, there's just pages and pages and pages of references. He regularly writes for The Guardian, etc. And what his specialist area is like tax avoidance and the pinstripe mafia, which is the KPMGs, the Deloittes, the Ernst & Youngs, and the PricewaterhouseCoopers. That they're as dodgy as. I mean, you know, never mind that, you know, your little small-time burglars and stuff. It's the pinstripe mafia. That's where the big bucks, all the, you know, the white-collar crime and the tax avoidance, the tax havens, all that stuff, that's where it happens. And, I mean, it's really scary stuff, and especially when you look at bloody dodgy outfits like Transparency International New Zealand, and you look at who... some of their sponsors are. It's the same sort of people. Talk about cover-up.
We've come up with so many great solutions already, I can't believe it.
Yeah, well, Bob, I think Penny's far more deeper. See, it's not really until recent times a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on commercial contract law starting to supersede common law, and it's only in recent times that I've sort of realised the importance of that now as well. Is you know, with the TPP agreement that's being discussed in secret, Penny, you'd be well aware of that. And basically the stuff that's been leaked, the conditions that are being imposed by what they call the investor state. Sure. You know, this is the financial institutions that are having a massive influence on the regulations and basically breaking down all barriers and giving them free entry to countries.
Well, it's outrageous because 600 corporations get to see the text and the public don't. So, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, what sort of partnership excludes the bloody public?
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
Yep.
You know,
it's more like a piece of...
And you see, you'd be aware also, because you're pretty familiar with Jane Kelsey, aren't you?
Yes.
Tenny, you're friends with her, eh? But at least they're telling us of the PPP negotiations that have been held in secret. But there's another one that's come up. Is it the TISS? They've just disclosed
TICS.
It's a new free trade agreement being done now with including the European Union nations as well. Because what they're trying to do is basically form these currency blocks. And it's a bit like they've done with the local government here in New Zealand. You know, all our councils are in the poo because of this impossible funding puzzle that's basically a pyramid fraud. And so what they do is they go to a bunch of you and they go, well, the ones that are already underwater, if we mix you up with the ones that are just above water, we'll offer you this avenue to cheaper credit so you can all get cheap credit. But we form this cooperative of liabilities as well. So if one of you go under, we can actually come in and set your rating base and everything with a view to repaying our debts. That's what the local government funding agency of New Zealand, basically, where many councils have joined now, is and it's the same thing as the European Union's a bigger model with about 17 countries in it. It's all these countries that were under this private banking pyramid fraud that couldn't stay. Some were already under and some were afloat. So they go and offer them these new cooperative to become these new cooperative pools of collateral, but they're also have to share the liabilities and they can never repay. So ultimately they all end up frickin' seeking each other and the bankers end up owning them all. And so this is it. No, this...
So the simple demand, okay, there's an election coming up now, so what should the demand be for the political parties to pick up? This is what we reckon would fix it. Okay, off you go, Ian. What will fix it?
Could I say one thing before? Make fraud illegal. Go ahead, Ian.
Basically, I believe we should demand an independent audit from some of the more truly independent high-level people with international high finance that have a history of working for the good as opposed to the bad, and basically reviewing the contract of the New Zealand Debt Management Office to which our Reserve Bank has contracted out our base accountancy of credit and issuance of currency. And if those guys are found in, it's just it's just irrefutable when you look deeply into and go line by line and do the old Swiss cheese chart thing through our financial system regulation and what it causes, that they're not living up to their contract. And basically, and if they aren't, well, then we reclaim our Reserve Bank for ourselves. And because basically they told us this system would give us access to cheap credit, access to foreign markets. Basically, we don't need to worry about maintaining our versatility as a nation because there is nobody out there that's going to take advantage of our vulnerabilities anymore. The world's benign, and that's what we need. We need a review, and basically.
But what is the document or documents that are going to be reviewed?
It's an omnibus of legislation. The Public Finance Act, the Reserve Bank Act, the International Financial Agreement Act. Another one I just recently discovered, and you guys will find this very interesting because looking into that TPP, this institution that keeps coming up is this ICSID, this International Committee for the Settlement of Investment Disputes. Are you familiar with that, Penny?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sits under the umbrella of the World Bank, which of course is the soft lending side of the private central banking network, and the IMF on the other side is the receivership branch. Basically, when you inevitably can't repay your debts, the IMF come in as a receivers on behalf of the private central banking network and take over your affairs and supposedly trade you out of trouble. But like Joseph Stiglitz, the former vice president of the World Bank and Nobel Economics Prize winner, has said it's actually the institution that chased you further into trouble, basically, to get what they didn't get the first time around. So, but this international committee for this is, I thought this is what the TPP was already going to sign us up to, and because it's an appointed arbitration board, it's not elected by anybody, and it's appointed by all the public institutions that are already subverted and perverted by criminal high finance. But to my surprise, we are already signatories of it, and it got ratified in 1971, and we already have a number of our QCs already on the arbitration panels that go around holding court cases when, say, the likes of a corporation has done an odious deal with the previous government or the likes, and the next one comes and says, "Oh, that's corrupt. We want to, in the interest of the social motive." Well, they hold an arbitration court basically to see whether you must continue to hand over your assets, confiscate the assets on behalf of the corporations, or basically what's happening there is, or you have to pay compensation for impinging the future profits of the corporation. It used to cost only about $100,000 to take a claim to this institution. The cost of it now has risen to something like $7 million for the average claim just to go and defend you. And we have a number of our high-level, old-school QC lawyers and the likes that work out of this. There's an outfit in London called the Essex Courts Arbitration Lawyers, and so one of our own QCs just appeared in a recent case with Ecuador where some oil interests took the new Ecuadorian government to court because they've brought in all these new environmental standards, and one of our guys was already a part of an arbitration board that awarded the biggest, something like $1.7 billion, and the biggest compensation awarded yet. So, see, my concern is we're already tied up with the arbitration courts of these outfits, and it makes me wonder. I've always sort of wondered why there hasn't been much action on the financial abuses we're suffering. Well, we're already essentially, I think our economic sovereignty is pretty much a falsity. Like, the International Financial Agreement Act that they recently passed back in 2012, I think it was, that passed into law, states that new regulations of the International Monetary Fund become automatic law or automatic regulation within our financial system structures without even now passing through Parliament. And that's been passed in. So a lot of our financial regulation, if we want to try and act against it for the social motive, is already out of our hands and in foreign bureaucrat institutions that are already majorly influenced by foreign big money, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and on whose lawful authority? If the will of the people is the basis of the authority of government, how the hell did all this happen?
Yeah, well, personally, I think we should use the TPPA as TP when we need to PP at a PPTA meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Vinny.
Gee, Lou, you're too sharp.
We'll be right back, folks.
You're too sharp for me, Vinny, I tell you.
I should be on 7 sharp, shouldn't I? We've only got 1 more minute left of the broadcast. Penny, have you got time for your solutions? Have we got any? Is there really a solution to anything? Look, okay, here's my creative solution. We sacrifice the bankers to an Icelandic volcano. Okay? Debt crisis solved.
I seen that the other day, and I thought that was a bloody good idea, mate.
Stranger things have happened. You'll see the economy just go boom. Oh my God, it's suddenly all right. Did somebody sacrifice a banker to an angry volcano? I think they must have.
1 minute would be great.
Okay. Yes, sorry, Penny, I'll shut up.
You have literally 1 minute.
Okay.
Go on, Penny.
Oh. Okay, folks, like I said, Penny Bright, Public Watchdog, is going to take on John Key, the Wall Street Poodle, to become the MP of Helensville. Really simple. Electorate vote Penny Bright, MP for Helensville. John Key, doesn't matter. Nobody votes for him. He's still going to be number 1 on the National Party list and get in anyway. So, why not have someone who's working for the 99%? So come on, folks, word of mouth, get that word out, and it's going to be fun.
Penny Bright, Ian Parker, the websites, ladies and gentlemen, are Penny Bright for Mayor at wordpress.com, and also, what was it, publiccreditorbust.blogspot.co.nz, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's if I remember correctly too, but if you type in public credit or bust on Google, you should come up with it.
Something of that nature. We'll see you again sometime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for supporting the broadcast.